A few weeks ago, the 10th anniversary of the first episode of Game of Thrones came around. And what a ride it was. Whatever can be said of the overall quality of the show, it's undeniable that the show managed to go from the highest of highs.
Tell me if your precious Renly commanded you to kill your own father and stand by while thousands of men, women and children burned alive, would you have done it?
To the lowest of lows.
To be honest, I never really cared much for them. Innocent or otherwise.
And no two scenes exemplify this better than the small council meetings in season 3 and 8, and more exactly, how they begin. It should be mentioned that both of these scenes were completely written by Dave and Dan, with neither being based on the books. So first, let's take a look at season 3 and how it begins the first small council meeting in that season. First, keep in mind the context in which all of this happens. The scene is the first small council meeting after the Blackwater. Before that, the main dynamic in the small council was Tyrion ruling as hand and trying to rein everything in. Now, after the Blackwater, that dynamic is dead and buried, with Tywin becoming the new hand. So, this scene needs to establish what the dynamics of the small council will be from now on, now that Tywin is hand and Tyrion has lost power. In that, the scene more than succeeds, being a brilliant moment of characterization on the part of Dave and Dan. It's almost as if they are actually capable of good original writing, as long as they have a good base to support everything on. So, let's watch this scene bit by bit and break it down to see just how much characterization it manages to fit in just 1.5 minutes. So first, the scene begins with a wide shot of Tywin. In this, he literally appears to us as a larger-than-life figure, the camera having to move upwards to even see him. Then, as the camera finally arrives at his face, the other three are made to look small, in the background and out of focus, while Tywin fills the camera, being in the foreground and very much focused on. Then, as we see the others linger around, waiting for Tywin to sit first, it is made abundantly clear to us Tywin is in charge here. Not only that, he is the clear, undisputed ruler. He has all the power. So with that established, Tywin sits down, allowing for the scene to characterize Littlefinger, Varys and Pycelle, as they too follow suit. First, we see Littlefinger and Varys. Littlefinger literally rushes in to take the seat closest to Tywin. The previous part has already established Tywin as the power in the room. So in this act of Littlefinger's, we see quite clearly not only his ambitious nature, that is reinforced later in this scene, but we also see his way of acquiring power, rushing headlong towards it. As he himself says, chaos is a ladder, and Littlefinger is climbing it as fast as he possibly can. We also see Varys here, letting Littlefinger rush headlong towards power, taking the seat after him. In this, we can also see his mindset and the way he operates. Varys is also someone that gathers and desires power, but unlike Littlefinger, he works more in the shadows, preferring to keep a lower profile so he can still operate for his goals without any massive risks.
The storms come and go. The big fish eat the little fish, and I keep on paddling.
Finally, we have Pycelle. So for those who don't know, in Season 3 there was a deleted scene with Tywin and Pycelle in which we're shown more explicitly that Pycelle's foolish old man act is just that, an act, and we also get to hear some of his philosophy on power. Now, a lot of people still complain this scene was deleted, but frankly, I don't mind. And the reason I don't mind is that all of that is conveyed here, as we see Pycelle doing his old man thing and intentionally sitting last, the furthest away from the seat of power. We are told here, without any words, exactly what the deleted scene told us in just a few seconds. We already knew Pycelle was faking it, so in this scene we see him intentionally staying away, trying to look meek and unthreatening, just wanting to maintain his position. And finally, we get Tyrion and Cersei's characterization. So the first thing to notice is the chairs Cersei and Tyrion are left to pick. They have a choice between the last two seats, the furthest ones from power. This is yet another piece of brilliant characterization, as both Cersei and Tyrion are seen as lesser in their family and unworthy of power by Tywin. Cersei for being a woman and Tyrion for being a dwarf. And we see from them refusing to sit in those places how they both reject that position given to them by Tywin. But as we also see, they both do it in different ways. Cersei does it by positioning herself by Tywin's side in an attempt to curry favor and make herself seem like a female version of Tywin. This is a common feature both in the show but especially in the books, where Cersei often thinks about how her father would be so proud of her once he's dead, and she often views herself as a female Tywin. We also see the mask Cersei puts on, that of the graceful, elegant queen as she moves the chair, a mask that starts falling off in later seasons. By contrast, Tyrion's mask is one of rudeness and insensibility. His mask is that of the imp or the demon monkey. In the way he moves it, we also see even more parallels, but also differences, between him and Cersei, adding even more characterization. First, there's the last chair remaining. While Cersei's chair was also one of the last, Tyrion's chair is not only at the far end of the table, but also isolated and cut off, showing how beyond even the way both him and Cersei are seen as lower, Tyrion is downright ostracized by his family. However, as opposed to Cersei that tries buttering up to Tywin, by this point, Tyrion has ceased trying to win Tywin's affections. As such, he moves his chair in a position directly opposite to his. In this, we can see him directly opposing Tywin, setting up the next 2 seasons of ever-escalating conflict between the two of them. And finally, we have one last bit of characterization. For although Tyrion is opposing him by placing himself at the opposite end of the table, Tyrion is also setting himself up as his equal, because, as the books state explicitly, Tyrion, not Jaime nor Cersei, is Tywin's son. He is the one that inherited most of him.
I am your son. I have always been your son.
So in just these 1.5 minutes, the show manages to characterize all the small council and quickly establish the power dynamic between them, all without a single solitary line of dialogue. This is honestly brilliant filmmaking. So now, let's compare it to a very similar scene at the end of the show. Likewise, we have a scene that needs to establish the small council after it has been completely uprooted and changed. Here it's because of Bran's election and Tyrion's appointment as Hand. And just like the previous scene, we have a lot of emphasis on chairs. So let's see what the show does. Yep, absolutely nothing. Nothing is shown here. Nothing is learned or conveyed. This waste of 2 minutes in the finale shows absolutely nothing. It's a hollow, soulless, meaningless bit of film that on the surface looks like Game of Thrones, but in reality lacks all the intelligence, all the character, all the context, and even all the meaning. And honestly, I can think of no better metaphor for how this show ended. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and comment what you thought about the ending of Game of Thrones.